Well, hello, folks. My name's Jeffrey Shaw. I'm a co-host with my fellow co-host, who's Andrina Forrest. And naturally, with this new technology, I'm in the Southern Hemisphere. Obviously, I've placed myself at the bottom of the little profile here. And of course, in the Northern Hemisphere sits our guest, and above him, where every woman should be, apparently, is my co-host, Andrina Forrest. So with all that in mind, I think we're in for an enjoyable show today, and if you want to catch up with the archive, I think that's even better too. Anyway, so Andrina, take it away. Look.
Well, good morning, good day, good evening, and if you're listening to the replay, welcome to Dreaming the New Dream. And just a quickie, I've been given information about different people that would like to come on the show. So if you know of anybody who's really dreaming the new dream and walking their talk, please get in touch and we'll follow it up. Anyway, swiftly moving on, today we are privileged to have Justin Newland, who's based in Weston-super-Mare, where I've spent many a sunny day down on the beach with the donkeys and in the mud, like many. So Justin has kindly sent me and gifted me this beautiful book, which I'm halfway through. I'm ploughing through it.
Oh, well done.
So you're an author of 4 books. So the first question I would like to ask you is, the one that I'm reading, Abdication. What order have you written them in? Which is the first one that you started with?
Okay. Good morning, good evening, good night to you guys, whatever it is, whatever time of day it is. Thank you so much, Andrina and Jeff, for having me on the show. I'm Justin Newland, and in answer to your question, Andrina, the Abdication, the book that you're reading, is actually the 4th of my latest novel.
Right.
The first novel was set in ancient Egypt and was The Genes of Isis. There we are, and there it comes up. The second was The Old Dragon's Head, which the cover of which is behind me, showing the dragon and the Great Wall of China. The third was called The Coronation. That's set in Eastern Europe, in Prussia, in the Great Enlightenment period. And then that brings us up to date with The Abdication.
Right. So, okay, that was my first question, but we're going to go back a little bit. It'd be nice for you to share where you grew up, and I know you're a doctor. Would you like to say what you've studied and where it's taken you? And gradually, we get into the writing book, your writing bit.
Okay, yeah, I can do that. I was born in Southend. I'm a Capricorn. That means, I say to people, I don't get invited to many parties these days. The reason is, Capricorn is like a fish goat, right? So problem is that people don't know whether to feed me plankton or grass. See, so anyway, that being said, I grew up. I was never any good at maths. Actually, I found an old book of mine, an old exercise book, and it said that I was quite good at maths, but not very good at English, funnily enough. And of course, maths and English have played a part in my life. More of that to come. So I then went to college, went to school, and all the rest of it, and ended up doing a master's degree in Sussex, in Brighton, in 1975. I then went to Imperial College in 1976 in London, and did a PhD in maths, would you believe?
Wow.
A lot of people have asked me, how can I then go on and write fiction having got a degree in maths? Because the two are almost like poles apart.
Yeah, of course.
So there's an enigma to start with.
Definitely.
But maybe it's a bit like there's a story about, I was talking to Jeff on it. just before we began the show. He was telling me about Air Marshal Dowling. The thing with the military people, a lot of military people who become senior and spend their lives very regimented, very ordered, very, very severely disciplined. Often later in life, that dynamic or that feature softens in them, and it allows them to move on to write things like poetry. So that's where the two, it's almost like the arterial and venal systems of the blood, if you like. One being the red system, the other being the blue system. So that's where the two can kind of compensate each other during a person's life. And I wonder whether the same is for me. So after that, I spent a lot of time in IT, working in the City of London. I worked for Lloyd's Register, actually, Jeff. You might be familiar with
ships,
the name, but I didn't know much about shipping. But I was part of the team which at the time was kind of moving all their records onto computer systems, in the 70s and 80s. So I kind of picked up bits and pieces about ships and ports and some of the bits and pieces. I'm sure you know much more than I do. But and then, around 2000, I got made redundant. I ended up getting a sort of redundancy package, some pennies in my pocket. I didn't really know what to do next. My girlfriend at the time had, still my girlfriend now, had a quite good hospitality experience. So we ended up buying a hotel. And I had decided that a good persona to take on would be Basil Fawlty. So I decided... Yes. I can understand why people were so moaning about their, the service that you gave them. Whatever you did, they weren't happy, and I'm not sure it's got any better.
Actually, I went to that bloody hotel.
Yeah, you probably did.
Torquay, it's called Glen Eagles. Glen Eagles Hotel.
Yeah, the one in Torquay.
Yeah. That's how it all started, wasn't it?
It was. That's right.
Yeah. Amazing,
yeah, so there you go. So you were one of the guests who were creating all the problems, weren't you?
More than likely.
Yeah, Nosy boy, yeah, sort of.
Yeah. Sorry, Andrea.
Yeah, no, I was just saying more than likely Jeff was one of the guests causing trouble.
Defo. Yeah. So then around that time, I'd always had a fascination with history, philosophy. I'd read a lot, still read a lot. I read sea stories when I was a young boy. And I suppose, I've read plays, the Greek plays. I got in my 20s, I wrote a novel set in Greece, sort of mythological novel. I think I've still got the handwritten notes and so on. I've never done anything with it. But then, in my 30s and 40s, went off and did while I was arriving on the train into London Bridge from where I lived, I'd be reading books on the train. I'd be studying bits of history. I took courses in philosophy. I even joined the Friends of the Western Buddhists, right?
Yeah.
Now, I didn't even join the Buddhists, if you think about it. I didn't even join the real Buddhists. It was the Western Buddhists, and even then I only joined the Friends, so I must have been right on the periphery of the Western Buddhists. So I just explored all these different avenues, these wonderful religions and ideas and philosophies that we've inherited, that we can play with in our own lives and explore. And that's kind of what led me about 15 years ago to decide, well, what am I going to do with my evening years, so to speak? And I decided to take a course in creative writing in Bath Spa University. So I went on a 6-week course. One thing led to another, and I started writing at that time The Genes of Isis, the novel about ancient Egypt. And so perhaps more of that later. But I've been through a whole process of basically learning the art and craft of writing. And there's the cover of the book. The covers of the book, just as an aside, are by a really well-known and really quite accomplished cover artist called Jim Burns. He lives up near Trowbridge, which you guys might be familiar with. It's off near in Wiltshire. And he's done all 4 of the covers of my books. So that's kind of helped to create a kind of a brand, because obviously you can see a similarity in the artwork. The other similarity between the books is the themes. The themes are similar, but they are standalone novels. And in each one, I suppose you could say, I'm trying to explore the human condition. What do I mean by that? I mean, how do we end up like we've ended up today? Now, there's a huge question to ask. So I've made small, tiny inroads into some of those areas by looking back at history with a view to understanding the causes of things which affect us today. Okay?
Right.
So, for example, everybody's familiar with the pyramids of ancient Egypt, and they're still extant. You can still go and see them. I've been there. Perhaps you guys have as well. I've stood in the middle of the King's Pyramid in Cheops. And it's just frightening, the feeling that this thing could just come down right on you. And you just be crushed. And it's just a feeling of so much compression. And I guess, what I'm trying to say in this is the example I'm giving is, look, you've got organizations today. You've got, well done, Jeff. You've got businesses, you've got governments, you've got institutions, you've got charities. Every one of them has got a boss, somebody at the top of the tree. Below them, they've got executives, they've got majors, and they've got people who sit on the board. Below them, they've got middle managers, and there's more of them than the people on the board. And below them, they've got the workers, they've got the peasants. And so you basically have a pyramid structure. So we're not talking about physical pyramids, we're talking about the structure that we've inherited. And for better or for worse, sorry?
There's loads of theories, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not saying it's good or bad, it's just a phenomena that we have seemed to have latched onto as a way of organizing ourselves. And there it is in pretty much every institution you can think of, even those who've tried to run their ideas on communist lines, they still end up with a guy who acts like a king or an emperor or the top dog. So it's what you might call colloidal. Colloidal is where you've got something which happens at all levels. Okay, so there's a run to get you going. Get us going.
That's a good start. So I haven't been to Egypt yet. I know Jeff has, but it's on my to-do list at some point. So yeah. Right. So
creative writing.
Yeah. How did the first one come into being? Like, because I mean, I write little things, but I don't class myself as a writer. It's probably in there somewhere as a book. Like they say, everybody's got a book waiting to come out. So what was your thoughts for the book? What inspired you to start the first book?
You could either be sitting on the throne, by the sounds of it, or he's having a shower, or he's in the garden, or he's washing the dishes because his girlfriend's told him to wash the dishes, and he was thinking about Egypt. And down come the words.
Yeah. So I mean, I went to Egypt in 2001, I think, but I'd studied Egypt for many, many years before that. And I suppose like I said, in my 20s, I'd written a novel about ancient Greece. And I suppose, like a lot of European views about world history, I'd kind of come to the conclusion that that's where a lot of European society and civilization got its origins. But it wasn't until I began to look a bit further beyond Greece and read people like Herodotus and his histories, and even Pythagoras to some degree. I mean, you understand Pythagoras was a philosopher. He's only known for his mathematics because
of course,
one reason. And I look further back, back through the New Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, even going back to the Old Kingdom when there weren't pharaohs anymore. They had kings, so they had Zoser and Shephren and these guys. You seem to have quite incredible facilities. You read of how they had all these brain operations. Some of the papyrus, I think it's the Harris papyrus, 257 brain operations. You think, well, how can that tally with them being, primitive? There's something weird here. So, I did further research into, things like the pyramid texts, where they talked about, they had this whole thing about flying back home to the sun and crossing the great water, and all these kind of concepts. And I thought, whether this is so fantastical, I'm going to have to put this in a novel. So I set out trying to learn the arts and skills of writing, because some of the stuff really is so out of this world that you wouldn't believe it if someone told you about it. So some of the things, like pectorals. You know what a pectoral is? It's like a piece of jewelry that sits on the chest. And you read that they had these pectorals made of particular kind of glass, and the glass was shot with some kind of snake venom. Not quite sure which snake, but probably a cobra or something. And they put it on a guy because they're looking for a mayor. Okay, they're looking for the mayor of the town, and they have a pectoral which would light up different balls, different of the glass ball, according to. And if you wanted to be mayor, you had to light up, the yellow ball, the blue ball, and the turquoise ball. And if you didn't light up those, you weren't the mayor.
Right.
So everybody knew who was who and who was doing what and who was doing what to whom. So there you've got some quite incredible stuff, plus the origins of jewelry, and the whole thing about, the clasps that they wore. For the Celts wore the clasps around the ankles and around the wrists. The origin of those, they're trying to keep some of the old fizz and some of the old stuff that was leaking out if they didn't put a bit of a guard on themselves. So all this I introduced into the novel as part of the scenario, quite incredible scenario, which moots or suggests the origins of our current human genetic. Remember, I said I'm interested in how we got to today. Well, one of the things is we have a genetic we live in. You know, it tends to be 6 foot tall. It tends to work in certain ways, and of course, those things haven't changed for many, many thousands of years. It's interesting that you might have heard discussion of this in I'm sure you have, but the old Bible says the human race is 7, 9, 10,000 years old, and you think, well, that's not possible, because you can go down the British Museum and they'll tell you we've got skulls which are 1 million years old. So there's an anomaly somewhere. So maybe what the Bible is suggesting is that not that we are only 7 to 10,000 years old, but our current genetic is only 7 to 10,000 years old. And what came before that was so different to the genetic we have today that it's not worth talking about. So that's the kind of stuff I wanted to explore, because it's part of saying, how did we get to how we've got to today? It's part of our inheritance, because we've inherited the earth, haven't we? The whole lot of it, the whole shebang, plus all the creatures in it. You know, and the question mark arises, are all those creatures endemic, naturally so?
Interesting.
So does that get you going?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So bottom line is, you go and do a bit of research and put some threads together, and then surely somewhere along the line, you know, when you go in Hollywood or movie world here on the Gold Coast, when they produce a show, they put up a storyboard so everybody's on board with the game plan. So it's almost like a cartoon character. And it's like comic books, you know, and you go there and say the storyboard, and here's the thread, so everybody who's there can see what scene, what act they're going to be shooting that day or that week, but having the whole show there on a storyboard. So when it comes to putting your book together, you do your research and sort of tie that in here, and then are you, as I indicated to you the other day, there's two types of authors. There's the plotter, creates the beginning, the middle, and the end. And then there's someone who I interviewed some years ago called Tracy Harding, Seat of the Pants. She's written 4 trilogies.
Oh my God. And
one prequel of the same thread of story, and she had no idea what she was writing. And yet each of those trilogies is over 680 pages, like in paperback. And then
is she a fantasy author, Jeff? I think I've heard of her.
Yeah, Tracy Harding. Yeah, she's actually phenomenal. I mean, when you start reading it, you just get taken into it, and you can be there. You're actually taken into the book, and you can see that you're there, and then you realize, oh my God, I remember that. It's just somewhere along, it's just waking you up. So, so she had no idea. Honestly, she was just in that mode. And when you get into book 6 of the second trilogy, she actually discovers that her oversoul, and it's got all these muses who've come in to assist and present the whole shebang. And you start realizing, oh, okay, everybody talks about their guardian angel or doorkeeper, or asking for a parking angel. I'm quite sure in your case there, when you are going on your journey, you've got your team there who's giving you little prompts and saying, you go here and you investigate this. You remember that story back when you were a child, you know, remember that one, put that to, so all of a sudden you get this whole frame in your mind, and you can just see the whole story manifest, and then you just sit there at the typewriter, go boom, 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 and off you go, and you print it. I mean, am I being exaggerating here, or is it?
No, I think you're getting close to how I currently imagine how I put stories together. I'll give you some imagery. I don't know if I'm sure you got gardens, and you've seen these trellises that you put in a garden. Right? And I'm not a gardener. My missus is the gardener. But I know how a trellis works. You put a trellis up, and it's got these sort of diagonal things, right? And at the bottom of the trellis, you put all the seeds, right? And then you let the seeds grow up the trellis in exactly how they want to grow up. Now, that's how I write stories. The trellis represents kind of like the historical record, if you like. The
background
bits
to
of the story that I can't change.
Yeah.
The organic growth that I can allow to happen and fictionalize is the seeds that I put in the ground, which then allow and grow up and in the way they want to grow up. Excuse me, up the trellis. So did you kind of get the imagery? Did you get the metaphor?
I saw it straight away as your backbone. Yeah. So your trellis is your backbone, and everything else is coming up. It's almost like someone would say it's the Kundalini, but instead of it's got 15 different bloody seeds coming up and interlining.
Yeah, there might be a single one. Yeah. Kundalini is another way of seeing it. That's right. Or the caduceus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you, brother.
Yeah.
Right.
So what is your what's your girlfriend after 20, 30 years? What's she got to say? I mean, is she waiting for the ring on the finger, or is she proud of you? What does she say?
What does she say about what?
Well, you put your head in the books and...
Yeah, I know. She says, come out and help me in the garden.
I would have thought that might have been the case.
Yeah.
Hey, okay, have a drink of water while I just give you the...
Go on then.
It'll put me on the self-frame. Okay, so my understanding, one of the hardest things for self-publishing authors, like today you had to go and find a publishing house. But on my morning walk, I've actually come across someone who actually works for HarperCollins. Okay. And she looks after the stores, QBD and Dymocks bookstores here in Australia. And I said, what happens if somebody wants to write a book and they want to present it to you? Not interested. You have to go through a literary agent who does all the primary work and works out the spatial thing, what you're going to be your synopsis, and then what's going to be your genre. And then when they present it to us, we'll accept it because, your literary agent knows exactly what we want, and we don't have to muck around with it. We don't have to put hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of work. It's already been presented to us, and the literary agent takes 10 or 20%. How did you come across? I mean, part of our conversation here, we're going to be putting up where you're going to W.D. Smith bookstores to do signings. I mean, that would suggest that you've done a lot of hard yards, and I sense part of your legacy is not writing 4 books. Your legacy is actually revealing that it can be done, and this is the path for the next generation to come through. So you can actually mentor the next author coming through to show, excuse me, I came through with a maths degree, I got a PhD, but hello, I might be dyslexic in bloody English, but I managed to overcome that and was able to write these stories and creativity. I think that's your legacy, Justin. I mean, so what's the first step when you presented your first manuscript? I mean, how did you go about walking the paths of London, or whatever they say?
Well, yeah, I mean, my manuscripts are self-published, Jeff. You got me right there. I had a lot of help from editors. I mean, certainly if you're trying to write a book, you've got to get the product as good as you possibly can, and the product means it's got to be entertaining. It's got to have a message, I think. And it's got to be a bit of a thriller and maybe a bit of love story, and on top of that, then I kind of lay those groundworks out so that I can then speculate on some of the sort of, I suppose, so-called philosophical aspects of the novel. The things about why we're here, what our human identity is, how this particular passage of history or moments in history came about, but not from the standpoint of the historical record, but from maybe a supernatural or esoteric view, which is the other thing that I try and introduce to my stories. I mean, I did try and get a publisher. I tried to get a literary agent for The Genes of Isis when I'd written it, without success. I then went to a very good company in Bristol called Silverwood Books, who self-published the novel to begin with. But then I learned that they basically only did pay as you go. They only did print on demand, if you like. That's what it's called in the business. And I realised that if I wanted to, take the next step, I needed a stock of books for myself and a stock of books from which bookshops could order through a publisher. So I went to a company called Matador, sometimes called Troubadour, who offer this facility to self-published authors. They're based in Leicester, very good company, very, very professionally run, recommend them. If anybody wants to contact me and as a result of this talk, please do, and I'll help in what I can. But they've published all 4 of my novels. The good thing I like about them is that they have they are very accessible. Obviously, you pay for their services, and you do need a few pennies to obviously publish your own book. But they have services, like printing. They have proofreading. They have marketing services. They have they can produce an ebook for you. They can do an ISBN for you. A lot of these things you can do yourself if you haven't got the pennies, and obviously you need them to publish it and to print it. They will also copy edit. Copy editing's a whole different skill as well. And the good thing is that you can finish your novel and in 6 months have it in your hand.
True. 6 weeks. 6 months.
6 months. Yeah.
Very young.
Now that is pretty impossible, I think, in the normal publishing era, because it could take up to 2 years. So I kind of figure, me being nearer the end than the beginning, so to speak, I ain't got 2 years to wait. So I'm just going to get it done. But like you say, Jeff, I have done the hard yards.
Yep.
I've introduced myself to local bookstores. W.H. Smith's particularly have been supportive. And independent bookshops, which are quite a feature in most countries, I think. I guess you've got them in Australia. So there's the current tour that I'm doing. Like you can see, I'm in Swindon on Saturday. Swindon's in Wiltshire. If you're around, do come along and say hi. So I will spend maybe 4 or 5 hours in each of those stores, mostly on a Saturday, which is the busy time. I will talk to people, introduce them to my books. And one of the unlooked for benefits of being an author is the very, very interesting people that you meet. Probably you find, in your realm that, even if you don't make money out of them, you meet some very interesting people in life. On Saturday, I was in Newbury. I was talking to a nurse who, just had quite extraordinary story to tell. And I was privileged to talk to her. She didn't buy my book, but that did not matter one jot. And I hate the hard sell. So I'll talk to people about my books, and if they're interested, sign it and they'll buy it. And I'm happy, they're happy, but there's really no pressure.
Most people now want you to take a selfie, don't it? And so they take the photo.
Some do, yeah. Some do.
And then they're on the
sure
Facebook and Instagram.
I'm not sure I really got the looks for a selfie though, Jeff. My makeup artist won't even come near me. So
she's out there gardening, isn't she? Yeah, hello.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Her hands are tinged with green.
Yeah, exactly. She has got green fingers, by the way, as well. Extraordinary green fingers. So, I don't know where I am now. But
Old
I
Dragon
do the hard yards.
It's got Old Dragon Head.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to
Andrea.
backtrack a minute.
Go on then.
With the writing of the book, I would like to know, do you suddenly think, right, I'm going to do a couple of hours today? Or do you suddenly feel inspired and I think, all right, I got the next bit's coming through and I need to get it down on paper? Or do you sort of do it once a week? Or, you know, are you like divinely guided as when, you know, when it's all flowing through, you know, writing down because I know in this lovely book, like I say, I'm halfway through at the minute, and I was reading about them. They're using sigils, and I know my sister and I we did some and we carried them around in our purse. So obviously there's like a lot of spiritual elements in your book. So is this like from all your learning along the pathway, or you sit there and the words are just flowing in your pen? Do you type or do you write it up? You know, how does it work from this side of before the end piece?
Yeah, it usually starts with a few notes in my diary, written longhand. You know, if I show my diary is not really about events. I mean, look, I don't know if you can see, but that's my diary.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, just full of, you know, notes. Nothing to do with what I've got to do, except ideas. And I work that they're like the seeds, I suppose. I'll start with the seed of an idea, and then it will kind of blossom in and thicken, and then I'll thicken the idea and usually write it up into some notes on the computer. And that's generally how I'll start a novel. And, you know, and from an initial idea, I'll end up with 80, 100,000 words. And each bit, I like to know where I'm going, I suppose.
Don't we all?
Well, yeah, but I do enjoy the bits where, you know, suddenly, like I had a passage the other day. I sat down and tried to do some writing on the next bit of the plot, and a whole different thing came out. And that's like you say, you know, where maybe there's a bit of the muse coming through, because I hadn't planned to write that, at least not in that way.
Mm.
And that's the joy of the creative process, isn't it? You know, something else turns up, and you think, well, hey, if only I can stay in this for another 5 minutes. It's just great.
What's the star sign of your girlfriend?
She's a Scorpio.
Oh, true.
I'm a Scorpio as well.
I most of my life, most of my very good friends have been Scorpios and still are. Scorpios and Cancers have played a big feature in my life. I don't know what it is about these crustaceans, you know.
Because I mean, Capricorn's an earth sign, and of course Scorpio's a water sign. So together, you guys make mud, don't you?
Tell me about it. Yeah, I know.
Hey?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Good story about how you actually, you know, because I can see that you visualize. I mean, so you got all that book there, your notebook there, and you're thinking that, and so your visualization comes in. And of course, mankind is really suited to that type of concept, because I mean, we take a picture, and for example, it could be a postcard of a couple sitting in the street in Paris, and you can see the Eiffel Tower, and you can see the name Rue, Cafe La Rue or something, and then you can give that to any person on the planet, and whatever their native languages, they'll always say it's a couple having a cup of coffee in Paris, isn't it? So opening up that picture, you know, and they say it's 1,000 words in that picture. Your visualization is about you drawing down that bubble memory out of your DNA, whatever you want to call it, your bubble memory, and then opening up and expanding it. And then all of a sudden, you, as you just said, you come up with a whole new, different bloody line of thought. I mean, how impressive is that to sort of try and keep on target? You know, I think that's another creative genius in the sense, okay, can I say that for another story, or is that another chapter 10 or whatever? How does that interravel?
Yeah, it very much like that. You know, that passage that came out the other day. In fact, I was thinking this morning, because because of course one of the things I've learned in narrative fiction is it's much more impactful if the story is as much in the present tense, if you like, as possible. To tell a story in the past tense, you kind of lose some of the immediacy of the narrative. So if you've got a character telling another character what something was, what was happening, you've lost that immediacy. But if you're actually got the reader in the moment, it's got much more element of thrill, suspense, and so on. So I'd written that passage in a conditional way. It was kind of they would be doing this and they would be doing that. And I thought, well, that really needs to be more prominent because it's such a key. It's only a couple of pages. It needs to be put in more of the present tense. So it just stuff like that, which I've kind of learned along the way from editors suggesting, that like I worked with one editor with the Egypt novel. And there was one passage of about, I don't know, a couple of pages. And he said, that needs to be fleshed out. That is a very key part of the story. And it's like, I hadn't spotted that. But now he'd shown me and said, yeah, you need to tell that story in a whole different way. And what it was the story of one of the characters whose name is Issa in the story. She travels into the astral realms to try to rescue her son, who has died, and well, I won't tell you the whole bit of it, but to change the tense of the story changed the whole impactful nature of it. So now I've learned that that's the case. I kind of look for that to try to bring more immediacy to the story and more interest to the reader. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, because in Greek mythology, I mean, Apollo's son, who was a healer, he went down in the underworld and got his mate and brought him back to life. And so Hades got a bit pissed off about that. So he talked to his brother Zeus and said, you can't have that. Like all these Apollo's son's healing all these people. I won't have any I won't have any people in my realm. And so next second, Zeus throws a thunderbolt and takes out bloody Apollo's son. And of course, Apollo goes then talks to Zeus and says, listen here, mate, this is your grandson you just taken out. You better bring him back to life. So, so Zeus goes and talks to Hades, and Hades says, yeah, rightio. So then Apollo's son gets brought back to life, and Zeus puts him out there, and becomes one of the constellations out there. So it's a great mythological story, telling what you're saying.
I love some of these elements. I try and introduce them into my stories. I mean, there's a bit of in the story you're reading, Andrina. I don't know if you know your Greek mythology at all, but on the very first line of the first page, I think there's a clue as to as to the identity of Tula. But I won't tell you what it is because you've got to read the novel now.
Yeah. I will.
Yeah. So what did you make about the sigils? Did you?
Well, I know they. I don't know who was using it, but they were using them for protection.
Yeah.
So there's like working with symbols, isn't it? I know, like we did names. We did our name or a word where it was back to front and sideways, and so I mean that. I worked with them years and years ago. So, I mean, when I read that, I thought, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. So, yeah, so that was interesting. And I know you talk about the angels in the book as well. So you obviously bring a lot of spiritual aspects in. So moving further on, your the Dragon's Head book, what is that? Anything to do with dragons?
Yes, it is. Basically, I've always been fascinated with Egypt. I've always been fascinated with old China. And there's the cover of the book on display there. Now, I can't remember how I got into this, but I'd researched old China before, and one of the things they say about an author is, write about what you know about. So, okay, I knew a little about China. In answer to your question, the Chinese believe that, if you sort of imagine the Great Wall going up the hill and down the dale, up the hill and down the dale, it's got a kind of serpentine nature.
Mm.
Okay. They believed that it was occupied by an old dragon.
Right.
And what would happen is that the dragon would rise up in cases of crisis, particularly. And of course, the wall is on the northern borders of China. And of course, it was the Mongols they were trying to protect against. The old dragon's head is therefore where the Great Wall meets the sea, because that's the head of the old dragon.
Mm.
And the sort of myth is that that's where the old dragon's having a drink. And you better not disturb it, because you'd be upset. You wouldn't want to upset an old dragon. So I set this story in 1400. This is historical fiction. The Genes of Isis is mythological fiction. And I think the 1400s was a turning point in world history, not just for China, but for the world. It's when the Dark Ages finished, if you like, and when the Renaissance was beginning in Europe, and when the seed of exploration was beginning with the Spanish Empire, the Portuguese Empire, da Gama, Cortez, Drake, and all the rest of it. So what the Chinese were trying to do, because they'd been invaded by the Mongols in the 1200s, Genghis Khan. I mean, absolutely extraordinary phenomena, I think, that invasion of the Mongols. I mean, they invaded China, then they invaded India, and founded the Mughal Empire. Mughal means Mongol, you know that. They got as far as Arabia and decimated what was called the assassin cult, the beginning of the assassins, and got as far as Hungary, right? It's just around the corner.
Yeah.
And they would have gone on if the Khan hadn't died. They all had to go home and have a powwow about who's going to be the next Khan. I mean, we might all have been Mongols.
I'm
if
sure.
it hadn't been dying, you know what I mean? So anyway, the Chinese, as you know, Jeff and Andrew, believe in karma. Because they've been invaded, they thought they must have been living wrong, because they'd invited the invasion. They called for it because of their bad way of living, so to speak. So having kicked them out, they were trying to find a new way for themselves. They were dreaming a new dream, if you like. They were trying to dream a new dream. This is not a new idea.
No.
They've been trying to dream new dreams for a long, long time, haven't they? So I got really caught by this notion and came up with this character. In fact, it's a multi-character book. It's got 4 characters in. One of whom is a guy named Bolin, who is an apprentice working on the Great Wall. And he has visions of things that have happened on the Great Wall, part of which is part of history, and he sees these ghosts and things. And of course, the Chinese got almost as many demons as the Egyptians, and they're incredibly superstitious and still are to some degree. And of course, that's part of stuff we've inherited or they've inherited. But I love the way that they think and the completely different angle that they come at things. And beginning of each chapter, I've got this little saying from Chinese philosophy and Chinese thinking. Just pick one out. There's one that I remember. Some guy had above the lintel of his door, and it said, and this is like 400, 500, 600 years ago. go out with awe and come back with fear. And I still haven't worked that out. I can understand the go out with awe, but why is he coming back with fear? It's just mind-boggling. But anyway, that's the kind of stuff I kind of love that. Just enigma. What has he left? What has he come back with fear with? But anyway, so there's the story, and it's about a number of these threads that I'm talking about. It's a coming-of-age story for Bolin. I do like to figure young characters, young coming-of-age stories, because it allows me to use that as a metaphor for something else coming of age. For example, China or the world. Because wasn't the 1400s and the Renaissance a kind of a coming of age? Because are we not still children, really, trying to be adult in our age? Because when we become adult, we can surely do away with war and famine and disease, and you might recognize those guys. They're the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and we've still got them thundering around down the high street. And we talk about progress. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Famine, disease, death, and conquest. They're still thundering up and down the high street. But anyway, I don't want to get too far down that road, Jeff. You told me off already, weren't you?
I'm listening.
You're listening. Okay. So anyway, that's the story. That's some threads of the story of the old dragon's head. It's an homage to Chinese philosophy and thinking. It's a story about a coming of age of Bolin, of China, and of the world. The seeds of the modern world set in the 1400s. So that's that story.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I put it on my list.
You're going to put it on your list, are you? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm still reading the tree book, and then I've got the other tree book that was mentioned on the show last week, and I want to finish yours. And and then somebody else said, "Oh, this is a good book." I said, I really don't want any more at the minute. I've got plenty, and I think I must make time for having a reading hour, because I used to read years and years ago, but I just find that I don't really read anything like I used to now, so I sort of dip in and out. So have you got a 5th novel in the making?
I have, yeah. I'm nearly finished it, actually. And it's about the Spanish Armada.
Right.
And that's 1588. And it's a single point of view character, a bit like the one you're reading, Andrina. Just one character, and it's from his point of view. And I wanted to write something about English history, basically, because all my stories, the third one, just to mention, the coronation, is about Eastern Europe in the 1760s, the Enlightenment period. So I haven't really written about England. This story, just to briefly mention that, thanks for putting it up, Jeff, is called The Coronation. And the title is really ironic. It's meant to be ironic because it's not the coronation of a king or a queen. Because I think in the 1760s, the Enlightenment was meant to be an upgrade, if you like, to humankind, to the human race. Something was trying to happen, and I've kind of signified it by the eagle. And of course, the eagle is one of the symbols for the mind, because the eagle can see from a long way away, as you know. It's got bifocal vision, extraordinary, a long distance vision. And so, being able to see things from afar is quite a marvelous gift. And the cover artist put this wonderful cover together, I mean, that's a sculpture, the head of the Madonna. I mean, how does he do that? You know, those things on the veil, absolutely extraordinary. But anyway, the Great Enlightenment was a period in the 1760s when there was a huge development of human capability, the discovery of sciences which never existed before, like biology, you know, physics, chemistry was being developed because they got the microscope, and a lot of these things were new. The anatomy of the human was only just being understood. I feature in the story a guy named Carl Linnaeus, who you may have heard of, and he put together the whole system of names for genus, all the genus of plants and trees and so on. And he was living at that time. And he was the guy who came up with the name Homo sapiens sapiens. Now, you might remember who they are. That's you and me, right? You know what it means?
Go on.
Homo sapiens sapiens means man, not just wise, but twice wise.
Yeah.
Not just wise. We're meant to be doubly wise, right? I think he was being very generous at the time. He must have had one too many coffees in the morning. Because
no, I think you must have come to Australia because we got wagga wagga, we got woi woi.
Exactly. So I don't know what he was on when he came up with that theory, but you know, he certainly came up with something, didn't he? Man the twice wise. In fact, Immanuel Kant came up with a definition of the Enlightenment. Here we are. And it has echoes for today. Let me read it out. There's a Latin phrase, sapere aude. And what it means is dare to be wise. Have the courage to use your own understanding. That is the motto of the Enlightenment. Mm. So basically what he was trying to counter at the time, and to some degree we still are, was superstition. Because, you know, things like rabies, people didn't understand where it came from. You know, they thought it was a disease because people lived wrong. And so there was all this thing about tree panning and taking blood through leeches and things like that, and getting rid of bad vapors. So the Enlightenment was partly to do with the diminishment of superstition. And of course, to some degree, in one way or another, we are still at the same crossroads. Because people, you know, we all struggle to use our reason in the way it's meant to be used. In the same way that in the story you're reading, Andrina, we struggle to use the gift of free will in the way that it was meant to be used. And I'm quite a believer in things being preordained, things having a purpose. You know, things go with things, don't they? You know, you don't walk wet into a dry room, for example. It's very simple, but you know, you use things for what they're meant to be used. You know, you use a trowel to put concrete on a brick wall. You know, to put on a brick. You don't use a Kleenex, a tissue, because it ain't going to work. Things go with things. So, but what goes with free will? What goes with wisdom? What goes with being twice wise? What character? What nature? What qualities? Because surely we're about qualities, the qualities we can muster. They're the things I think that get us, you know, to the next project.
Hey, can I just bring this book here that you've done, the application?
Yeah.
When I saw the bull and the Taurus, that was a Minios civilization, one in Crete, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, similar. It was taken up. It's actually a Hebrew fella called Moloch. That's what it's depicting. But I think the cover artist sort of picked up on the bull-headed creature and chose this particular symbol, which does have echoes of the Minotaur. And you notice that the abdication, the title, sort of is a pairing with the third book, which is called The Coronation. So I thought, if you're going to get a coronation, what happens next is you can get an abdication. Of course, neither are to do with a king or a queen. But let me just read you the preface, or it's only very short, of the abdication to give you an idea what I'm trying to suggest with it. When a man loses his way, he feels desperate. When a nation abandons its purpose, it slides into anarchy. When Homo sapiens shuns its nature as the wise, the kind, and the humane, it can only be called the abdication. So the idea of the abdication is from our nature. If we are wise, and the house we live in is called wisdom, what lives in the house is kindness and compassion and consideration, forbearance. So something like greed, or those 7 deadly sins that you mentioned, Jeff, they don't really belong in the house of wisdom. So to follow the 7 deadly sins is an abdication from one's nature. That's the kind of sense I'm trying to explore in the story. I don't know if you've picked up on any of those things, Andrina, in the story so far.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, because obviously I'm halfway through. So, but, I would like to finish it. And because obviously once you get into the story, but I know a friend of mine, she just reads novels all the time. And she actually, once she starts reading it, she's actually she's there, right in every word, the scenery, everything. Like, I'm not there yet, but and there's like so many different names of different people in there. I think, oh God, who was that? Where did he come from? Who did he belong to? Then I have to go back a little.
Okay. I should put a glossary, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, no, because I was thinking, I'd write Chula and then like different people she's met, and then like that's her son, and that's the baby that died, and so for me it was like, oh, who was that? I need to go back and remind myself who that person was. Because like there's a lot of people in the book.
Yeah, she meets a lot of characters, doesn't she? But I liked her character, and I do like writing strong female characters. And I think I do like strong female characters, and she's certainly one of them. I enjoyed writing her.
No, I'm looking forward to how it pans out. Going off on another little tangent, do you ever do any little writing workshops for people or classes to help people along?
I have done, I've got a couple of talks that I've given. One about writing historical fiction, because people who write historical fiction can get lost in the research. So you can end up, because there's so many wonderful things you could discover when you do your research. You can get completely lost from the story you're trying to write, and it's a whole balance trying to get the bit you need to write, to research just that bit. For instance, yesterday, I've got to the point of the story of the Armada where the main character is sort of sailing along the south coast of England. So I actually found this website which tells you how long it takes to get from one place to another. Because if you use like traditional websites, say I want to get from Hastings to Brighton or something, which are two towns on the south coast of England. It would take you on the A road, right? And I'm not interested in the A roads. I want to know how long it took by sea. So I found this website which tells you how long it takes you to get there by sea. So I'm pleased about that. Just to say that, so there is this whole thing, some things I've learned over writing some historical fiction, how to write it, how to research it. And the other talk I've got is about self-publishing, some of the do's and don'ts and wills and won't haves and suggestions as to how to produce a really good product, and also how to put yourself out there, like you say, Jeff, and live your new dream, and go out with your book and be proud to be able to have people buy it from you, because you've got to feel that you've done as much as you can, that someone's going to pay for it and enjoy your novel. You've got to feel the confidence to do that, and you can only feel that if you've put your all into it.
Hey, last night at my dream state, which was you guys were having fun down the beach. Of course, Andrina was. Hey, I was taken to a realm where I was dealing with Braille, and I was really interested in the fact that the front cover of this particular book, I mean, you opened it up, the preface and the introduction was all in Braille, and I thought, that's really interesting. I mean, how many books are actually written in Braille these days when the new format is talking books?
Yes.
So this whole concept of talking books. I mean, our good friend who's in Welsh come English medium, who now lives in Wollongong, Val Hood, she's been listening to Tracy Harding's trilogies, and because she's driving from Wollongong up to Sydney, it's ample time for her to listen to the book. However, the person who's doing the reading can't pronounce the Welsh words in its proper context. Yeah. So whilst it's great and novel to be able to drive along and listen to the book being taught, I mean, we go back into the 50s and 60s, I suppose. Did you have that radio show called The Archers?
Of course. It's still on. It's still on. Yeah.
Okay, so radio, where you've got the show being talked, the different characters on radio doing the radio shows, to see it actually now in a talking book, do you see a time for your particular 4 books that you've written to be able to go into talking books with almost like a radio play, if such, where you have the overall narrator who's doing a trellis, and another voice or voices come in to be your plant seeds that are growing up around the trellis. So you're actually then listening to the story being told by 3 or 4 different speakers. I'm just saying, I'm just throwing it at you after learning all about Braille. Yeah,
very interesting. Just as an aside, I think one of the important things I didn't mention about the trellis analogy is that the story needs to be organic. So one thing needs to follow from another. And that's why sometimes you get thrown out of a story in a book or on TV often, where something happens which doesn't have any organic relevance, if you like. And you think, well, that, there's no way the character would have done that. But anyway, to go back to your question, Jeff, it has crossed my mind, but because I'm self-published, it will cost me quite a lot of money to have it done. So I'm kind of waiting, maybe in the next life, when my books are that popular, to be able to warrant that kind of outlay.
Well, you can download a software program it's from nch.com, and you can download their product, which will give you almost like a desk, or a music desk, or a sound desk, or a radio station mixer. Yeah. And so basically, as long as you've got the hard drive on your computer and you've got a decent microphone, such as a a Rode RODE podcast or some good microphone. It's got a USB jack and you plug it into your computer and you just click the mixing disc and you can record it in MP3 and you can just read it through and then you can actually edit it and take out the ums and the ahs.
Yeah. Well,
in fact, your good gardener could actually do the talking, mate.
You're right.
I mean, that's another product, isn't it? So you can actually have your book can be read as a male voice, and then you can have one for a female voice. Because the reason I'm saying that is that when I was in London in the bombings, and they shut down our mobile phone system, so I'm thinking, what's going here? So I went into an O2 shop. So my mobile's gone down. They said, they've switched off the mobile phone system because they thought it was created by bombs. And from that moment onwards, for the next week, when I was listening to BBC Two, even BBC One for that matter, or even the local independent radio stations, BBC particularly, the cheeky buggers, they get the female voice because it's in a higher octave, in a higher register, either an alto or a soprano.
Yeah.
They go and drop their voice down by using the mixing desk to put in a bit more bass.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it gives them a bit of sense of authority. Yeah. Because generally speaking, if you're running a stereo system, if you don't put your subwoofer on or your bass, you're only listening to the female range.
Yeah.
It doesn't come across strong, So so it was all about the British coming on and saying, we're standing tall, we've done this before, we'll fight you. And having the females who are part of our culture now, whether it's on TV or radio, you noticed, because I'm always listening to the inflection of people's voices, and I realized, you cheeky buggers, you've actually got to give these females a different voice, because when you actually see them being interviewed out in the street, you can notice that they're in their top register of the octave, which is where the female is.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, if you're going to be doing something, you can have a male book and you can have a female book, and it'd be interesting to see how the demographics and the profile of your books and how they get purchased. I'm just saying demographics.
I mean, I do a chapter or two, or because I've got a few things on my website where I'll read a chapter, record it, and post it as an MP3 for people to listen to. So I do that. Quite enjoy the reading of them. A chapter here or a chapter there. But it'd be good if it was done professionally. I do know one or two people who do it. But I think we're getting near the end of the show.
Yeah. So, it's been fascinating. Really enjoyed you sharing, especially all the history and linking everything together and put it in book form. So, it's been lovely.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, guys.
No, it's our pleasure, and good luck with your next book.
Thank you.
I just do that book signing again, so that for people in where are we in Somerset? Basically Somerset, and then you're going over to Wales, aren't you?
There's what is it? Swindon, Henley-on-Thames, Wokingham. That's kind of more Hertfordshire, M4 corridor. Reading, and then Bridgend in Wales. Newton Abbot is southwest. Swansea back to Wales, and Salisbury. So that's just the ones I got booked up so far. And I had an email from a guy this morning wanting me to do a couple more, so it'll be into June.
So Newton Abbey, that's the getting close to Forest of Dean, isn't it?
I think it is down that way. Yeah.
Right, so then Salisbury, obviously there's a history to Salisbury with the Magna Carta. There's one of the few copies that are available there for people to go and witness, isn't it? All right.
Yeah.
I just put us back to there and then we go. So thank you folks for viewing, watching and listening. And Justin, it's been a pleasure to have you here. It's been insightful to be able to get inside a mathematician's left brain concept of And we never talked about quantum theories or
No, we didn't, did we? No,
get into Einstein's theory of relativity,
absolutely.
or the
That's another
numbers.
time.
Yeah, right.
That's really amazing. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Keep dreaming the new dream, you guys. Yeah,
Thank
fantastic show. Great concept.
Yeah. Love your work, Justin. Very good. Thank you. And
All
I like
right.
the guys. The first three books have all got that strong yellow presence that really strong, and so your books stand out straight away because they've got that concept in it.
Got
That's
the
the
same
only
sort
one.
of theme, haven't they? You know, where
The
your
fourth
name is
one's
at the
different.
bottom and the colour range.
Yeah, and of course we got the angel on the back. All my stories have got angels somewhere or other. I'm fascinated with angels.
Oh yeah. So you can
Well,
see
we have
the
to
wing.
say you're one strong earth angel, Justin. That's what we'll have to
You reckon so?
All right.
Brilliant. Thank
Love
you
your
very
work.
much, Justin. Been a
Thank you,
pleasure.
guys. Great to see you guys.